Suspension System Training Coach course, Suspension Training Exercises Part 1, Upper Body Exercises. So the objectives of this module are to give an overview of upper body suspension training exercises, to provide coaching points and application for each exercise or variation, and provide guided practice for the exercises and give example upper body sessions to follow. So part 1, this presentation will look at the pulling movement exercises and supplementary exercises associated with this movement or muscles. So we'll be looking at horizontal rows, downward pulls, scapular retraction and elbow flexion exercises and variations. So the first exercise we'll look at is the row, in particular close grip row. So this is going to be working the back, biceps, posterior core muscles. So unlike a kind of seated row, you are going to be utilising, like I was going to say, this posterior core. So your erector spinae, your glutes and your hamstrings are all going to have to work in order to keep your body nice and rigid. On the coaching side, focus on keeping that body rigid and straight by bracing the core and the glutes. And you want to keep the elbows close to the body in order to help utilise the power of the lats. Regression. So to make the exercise easier, you can reduce the lever length by bending the knees. You can also make the exercise easier by moving the feet backwards in order to make the body more vertical, so you'll effectively be lifting up less of your body weight. Progression wise, you can move the feet forwards in order to make the body into a more horizontal position, which will increase the amount of your body weight that you are rowing. So here we see this exercise in action then. So it's close grip row, keeping the elbows nice and close, and this is going to allow us to use the strength of the lats. As you see, the body's kept nice and rigid, we're just pivoting on the ankle, but the legs are straight, the hip is kept in that extended position using the glutes, and the body's kept nice and straight using the posterior core as well. Head is up, chest is up, and as you can see, as we kind of perform the exercise, there's constant tension on the straps throughout the entire range of motion. As we said, this is going to differ from your kind of seated row. Although it's working similar pulling muscles, you are going to be working the posterior core more than you would do in that fixed path exercise. Now, if you're looking at kind of applications for suspension training, so if you want a hypertrophy application, you could do something like a drop set protocol, which could be used. Instead of dropping the load like you would do if you're using free weight, so for example, if you're using a barbell, you would gradually start to strip off the plates along the side. If you're using dumbbells, you go from a heavier dumbbell and start utilizing lighter dumbbells. In the case of the suspension system, you can do it by simply adjusting the body angle, and this is going to effectively mean that you are decreasing the body weight that you're actually lifting with each repetition. So what we could do, for example, is suspension system rows. You might do 8 to 10 reps to failure. Then at that point of failure, then move your feet, walk your feet slightly backwards, not too far, you don't want to make it too easy, but walk them back a little bit. That'll make the body angle more vertical, you'll be lifting less of your body weight, which should allow you to continue that set. So you then, again, proceed with more rows, do as many repetitions as possible. So this might be ideally kind of 2, 3, 4 repetitions. Again, at that point of failure, move your feet slightly backwards again and repeat. So variations of the row, where we can, in addition to walking the feet forward, once you get into a horizontal position, you can actually make it a little bit harder again by elevating the feet up, preferably on like a solid object, as we see here with like a plyo platform. This will put the body into a decline position at the start anyway, and again will increase the intensity of the exercise. You can put it onto an unstable surface like a stability board, but we do tend to find that because the straps are a little bit more unstable and then the feet are unstable as well, that does make that exercise quite difficult to perform. So generally we advocate putting the feet on a more stable object because as a suspension system, there's enough instability with the exercise anyway. So another variation, you can perform a wide grip row. And this will decrease the involvement of the lats just because it changes the angle, so with the elbows high, it's a very inefficient position for the lats to exert any kind of real force. As a result of decreased lat involvement, it will increase the overload on the posterior deltoid and the scapular retractor muscles, so the mid trapezius and rhomboids. You will need to decrease the intensity from a standard row, which means adopting a more vertical body position. Reason being, the lats are a powerful pulling muscle, and if you're not utilizing them, it's unlikely you're going to be able to exert the same amount of force. Other variations, what we could do what we call a split grip, and what this means is you're going to perform a close grip movement with one arm and then a concurrent wide grip pull or row with the other arm. So one elbow is pulling high, one elbow is pulling close. And this is a little bit challenging. The split grip is going to help us to challenge the user's proprioception. So rather than just pulling both wide or both close, we're trying to do this bit of a mixed grip. And you get the same proprioception challenge when you do a split grip pull-up, for example. So one wide or one pronated, one supinated. You get the same kind of thing. If you want a challenging variation, single arm row. So we can use a single strap for rows, so particularly with two strap systems, this works very well. And this is going to help to overload the pulling muscles on the side that you're using to pull with. We'll also challenge the grip, and a lot of people, if they do have a very weak grip, can sometimes struggle with this. We'll also challenge the stabilizers, because as you're holding on with one hand, naturally your body wants to rotate. And so the stabilizers have to control that rotation of the body. Just like when you're doing a plank and you lift one hand up, body naturally wants to rotate. Again, you'll need to decrease the intensity from a standard row, which is going to mean adopting a more vertical body position. So we've done wide, we've done close. You can also change the actual position of the hand, so the type of grip you're adopting. So here we'll show you a few variations there. So we can do it with a supinated grip, so palms facing upwards. This is going to help to increase recruitment of the biceps brachii muscles. Or we could do it with a pronated grip. So in this case, palms facing downwards, and that's going to decrease the recruitment of the biceps brachii, puts them in quite an unfavorable position. So you're going to get this little bit more on the kind of forearm musculature. So it almost becomes like a bit of a reverse curl. It's not, but it just means, again, you can't really recruit those strong elbow flexors as well. The other variation is a neutral grip. So the palms are effectively facing inwards, or facing each other in this kind of semi-supinated position. And that, again, we can perform any of these holding the pronated, the supinated, or this neutral grip throughout the range. Or what some people prefer to do, me included, is actually kind of rotate as you perform the standard row. So you tend to start in a pronated position. So when your arms are extended, palms are facing downwards, and then as you do the pull, you then rotate into this neutral grip position. So when your arms are flexed and you're at the top part of the row, your palms are actually kind of facing each other, and that feels nice and comfortable as you're performing the standard row movement. Which variation people choose to do, well, you can just tweak it during their kind of programming, so you can kind of do different ones just to challenge different muscles or different motor units of the same muscle, or you may just find that you get to try each of them, and whichever style they prefer, just generally use that one. Now, here we have L-shape rows, and L rows are probably the hardest horizontal pulling variation that we can do. So you would adjust the straps so that your arms are extended and straight when you're lying supine on the floor. So you effectively position yourself lying on the ground. You want the straps perfectly vertical, and you should have your arms fully extended. So you almost want it almost like a centimetre or two, just slightly above. That works quite well so that when you do go to kind of full extension or near full extension, you don't actually touch the ground. You then lift the legs up to 90 degrees, as we see here, so we get into this L shape, and you hold that position by bracing the core. So you're going to use your anterior core and your hip flexors in particular to hold this position throughout the range. You then perform the rows. So again, you're going to pull on the straps, trying to lift your chest up towards the handles, maintaining that L shape throughout the range. The big error that we see with this is people try and kick up with their feet and extend their hips. The idea is that it should always be a pure horizontal row, and the torso should always be horizontal throughout the entire range. That's quite hard, in fact very hard. You can make it slightly easier by using a partner, or if you're a kind of trainer, you can just hold on to their legs, their feet, and just kind of guide them up a little bit, and just that little bit of support can make it achievable. Still very challenging, but more achievable for a lot of clients. So here we can see this in action. Straps are vertical, just reaching up, and we're holding that pure L-shaped position. As you see, we've just adjusted the strap, so he's got, although he maintains tension, he's actually just keeping this off the ground throughout the range. Very hard to do, still a horizontal row. So we have a big range. This is very, very challenging. Or we have the row that we showed you at the beginning, which is, particularly when you're very vertical in the body position, quite easy to do. So all body weight manipulation, but a large spectrum of difficulty. Now, L-shaped pull-ups, a similar body position, but now we're actually kind of pulling in a slightly different angle. So L pull-ups are probably the hardest downward pulling variation. So we can call them L pulls or L pull-ups. Those kind of terms are used interchangeably. So we want to adjust the strap so the arms are extended, this time above the head when you're sat on the ground. So again, sit directly beneath the straps, adjust them upwards so that your arms are fully extended. Take hold of the handles. Legs are held out at 90 degrees. Again, we hold it there by bracing the core, and then we effectively perform pull-ups, maintaining this L-shaped position throughout the range. Very good for increasing the anterior core and hip flexor strength and endurance. We can vary the hand position, supinated, pronated, neutral, rotating. If you do want to make it easier, then we can kind of bring the knees towards the chest, which decreases the lever arm. But effectively, you're doing a pull-up whilst holding this kind of isometric leg raise position. Very challenging. So here we see these L pulls or L pull-ups in action. Trying to keep the legs nice and extended, out at 90 degrees, holding that L-shaped position. So we see from the hands, we're actually starting in a bit of a pronated position and then rotating into this kind of neutral grip as we come up. And suspension, even if you kind of attach them nice and high, these kind of pull-ups using suspension systems are very comfortable to perform. Now there's a bit of some supplementary exercises. So this isn't a pull movement per se, it's more of a supplementary exercise for this movement pattern. So reverse flies, also called T-pulls, because you're going to get into a T-type position. It's going to work the posterior deltoid and the scapular retractor muscles, so again, mid-trapezius rhomboids. On the coaching side, start in the very similar to kind of row position, just a little bit easier. You're going to pull the handles outwards with the arms out at 90 degrees of abduction, so you keep the arms kind of straighter. You can have a little arm elbow bend, but keep that minimal, and the hands just move outwards out to the side. You want to focus on pulling or squeezing the scapula together as the arms move apart. And as we said, you want to do it with the body angle in a more vertical position than you do the row, because again, you're not using the biceps, you're not using the lats, so the amount of force you're going to be able to produce is going to be less, therefore you want to lift less body weight. For the regression, move the feet backwards to make the body more vertical, and to increase it, move the feet forwards to make the body a little bit more horizontal. So here we see this in action. As we see, we kind of end up in this T-type position, hence the name of T-pulls. You can have a minimal elbow bend, but we really try and limit that elbow bend, just like we do with kind of reverse flies, if you're doing those with a cable or a dumbbell. But effectively, this is a reverse fly using your body weight as the resistance rather than a free weight. We can adjust the distance apart that the straps are as well, but we're mostly focused on squeezing the scapula together, getting retraction, and trying to avoid significant elbow flexion, and definitely avoiding any scapular elevation where we're bringing the upper trapezius into the movement. Variations of this, well, we could do Y pulls. So similar to the reverse fly, but this time instead of just pulling the hands apart, we're actually coming up and finishing in this Y position. So you do get a little bit more lower trapezius activation. And we're just trying to vary the angle that we pull at. Again, try to minimize the involvement of the biceps, so try to limit limit the amount of elbow flexion that you may be getting. But again, it's very good for improving the scapular strength. So for our scapular stabilizers and our posterior shoulder. Very good for improving the strength and endurance of that area. Another variation is what we call kind of W pulls. We allow the elbows to drop down. We do allow the arms to bend, but we're getting very minimal kind of involvement of the biceps because what we're focusing here is on external rotation of the shoulder. Again, this is a tough exercise to do. The other variation is to do it more like a U, as we see there. So it's a subtle difference. That's a U with the elbows down lower. We call it a W, but again, we're focusing predominantly on the shoulder external rotation. And then one of the other variations for these types of pulls is what we call I pulls, or overhead pulls. So in this case, you keep the arms straight and you're lifting them both above the head. So almost like a kind of a double front raise, but you're starting off with the hands in that flex position, and then you're going into, again, a kind of full flexion, so the hands finish above the head. Tough on the shoulders, again, still hard on the scapular stabilizers. And the trick is, again, try and keep the body nice and rigid. You want to avoid pushing your hips forward to kind of initiate the movement. So you want to keep your core nice and braced as you perform this exercise. Again, it's quite difficult, so you don't want to make it too challenging with the body angle in the start position. Now, one of the variations of a kind of like a single arm row is we can do this reach to row. So what we're effectively doing here is we do our single arm row, but in between each repetition, when the arm's extended, we're going to rotate the body as if you're trying to reach back towards the ground. So this adds additional kind of rotation movement through the torso, makes it a little bit more challenging around the scapular stabilizers as well. And this again can be quite tough on people's grip. If they do have a very weak grip, you do tend to find that fatigues throughout the set. And then on to supplementary exercise, is going to be working more the elbow flexors or the biceps. So we're looking at bicep curls. So this is effectively a suspension system preacher curl or a suspension system Scott curl, depending on which name you want to go by. On the coaching side, trick is with this, keep the elbows up and the upper arm still. So the upper arm still is a standard kind of recommendation during all biceps exercises. We want to focus on the elbow flexion. So in this case, the arms are reaching outwards as if you're doing a row, palms facing upwards. But the trick is, what differentiates it from a row is when we row, we bring the elbows downwards towards the side of the body. In this case, in that start position for the row, you just want to imagine that the upper arm, the humerus, doesn't move at all, doesn't drop in the slightest. The best way to achieve this, because most people will naturally want to row, bring their lats into it to help them, is you coach them to pull the hands or pull the handles up towards the temple or the top of the ears. The only way they can do that and bring the handle that high is to maintain that elbow or upper arm position. Body angle, again, is going to have to be more vertical than the row, since you're only using the biceps to produce force and no lats. So regression, you move the feet backwards to make the body more vertical. To make it harder, we can move the feet forwards to make the body more horizontal. So again, you're lifting more of your body weight. So here we see this in action. Going to lean back, palms facing upwards. And then again, we're trying to keep that upper arm nice and still. So coaching them to keep the elbows up nice and high, bring the handles towards the temples or the top of the ears. And if you just watch the upper arm, again, we're trying to limit any downward movement of the elbow, which would be indicative of trying to bring your lats in to help you lift the torso upwards. Again, the core is trying to maintain a vertical or rigid body position, so avoiding any pushing of the hips forward. So on application, well, we could do what we call a pre-post exhaust tricep. So pre-post exhaust means that you do an isolation exercise for the first of the 3 exercises. You do the same isolation exercise for the third of the 3 exercises, and then you do a compound movement that works those same muscles for the second exercise. So in this case, the 3 exercises, we're doing these bicep curls. We're doing rows, so the compound movement, and then we're back into bicep curls again. You're going to do 8 to 10 reps of the bicep curls, go into near failure, take a quick 10 seconds rest, and then you're going to move into rows, going for about 6 to 8 reps. Again, quick 10-second rest, and then back into bicep curls for about 6 to 8 reps. You then take 120, 180 seconds recovery, and then you would repeat for a total of maybe 3 to 5 of these tri sets. your biceps, the elbow flexors, will be pretty much toasted at the end of that. Variations of the bicep curl. Well, we could do a reverse grip, so it's effectively like a reverse curl. So have palms facing downwards, and this will decrease recruitment of the biceps brachii, and as a result will increase the brachialis, brachioradialis recruitment. Quite hard. Again, you need to keep the elbows up. You need to try to focus on squeezing the elbows together so they avoid coming apart. But it's a tough one for the forearm musculature. And then another variation for these bicep curls. I do love this one. This is what we call a cocked wrist variation. So this technique will increase the overload on the biceps brachii by decreasing the involvement of the forearm flexors. So half the exercise is as we've just been doing it. So when you do the concentric phase, you perform it as we were a minute ago with the wrists in a kind of neutral position. So you pull upwards, you bend the arm, bring the handles towards the temples or the ears, but keeping the wrist in a neutral position. Absolutely kind of normal. It's more the eccentric phase where things start to change. And so once we've kind of got up to the top position, then you're going to allow the wrist to cock back. So if you look at the image on the left-hand side, we're going to allow the wrist to cock backwards and downwards. And then you're going to perform the eccentric phase when you're extending the arm with this wrist cocked backwards. This adaptation is effectively going to decrease the involvement of the forearm flexors, which as a result increase the amount of overload on the biceps. So this adaptation turns the standard bicep curl into what we call a negative accentuated variation. What that means is we're effectively adding more stress to the bicep on the eccentric phase. Very similar to kind of your partner adding more weight on the eccentric phase when you're doing an exercise. Effectively, you're just making it less efficient, which makes it harder. One of the less common variations, you can do these kind of side-on single arm bicep curl. So you would stand side on, with the arm kind of abducted out at the side, palm facing upwards, and then you'd perform this kind of bicep curl, almost like you're doing a double bicep pose. As you can see in the image, Mark's nice and happy whilst he's doing that one. You'd move your feet closer to the anchor point, therefore increasing the angle of the body in order to increase the intensity. And then the last variation we'll kind of look at is what we call a bear hug biceps curl. Again, this is going to work the elbow flexors. Much of the principles are the same with any other kind of bicep curl. You're trying to keep the upper arm relatively still and just focusing on flexion of the elbow. So in this case, palms are facing inwards. Again, we keep the elbows up and the upper arm still. But what we do now is going to pull the hands towards the chest. Again, the tendency is people want to let the elbows drop down to try to bring the lats into it. You need to get them to focus on keeping the elbows up. Call it a bear hug bicep curl because it's almost like you're trying to hug someone else as you're kind of bringing your hands towards you. The other coaching cue I tend to use is as you can kind of bring both hands towards like the sternum, so you almost finish up in this kind of one potato, two potato with one fist on top of the other at the end of the range of motion. Body angle again is going to have to be more vertical than you would with the row because you're only using your elbow flexors, the biceps, to produce the force. Regression, again, move the feet backwards to make the body more vertical. To progress it, you want to move the feet forwards to make the body more horizontal. Again, if you want to, you can kind of bend the knees, just like we did with the kind of row. We tend to use this one in particular, if you want an example of application, this works quite well for MMA fighters or grapplers. So if you're someone grappling, you're on your back and your opponent is on top of you trying to posture up to punch you in the face, then you need to kind of develop a reasonable amount of strength and endurance to be able to hold their head or their chest onto your torso to stop them getting an advantage in the kind of that fight. If a round lasts maybe 5 minutes, then you need to have good isometric strength endurance. So we can do this as a normal kind of isotonic exercise with a normal full range eccentric and concentric phases. Or for someone like that, you position a hand so it's at the almost exactly the same point that it would be if someone's head or torso was on their chest, and you get them to hold that for duration, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. to improve that isometric strength endurance. It's a tough exercise to do. Again, if you're not a grappler MMA fighter, you can just simply use it as a variation from every other standard bicep curl you do. So here we see it in action. Keep the elbows up and see the upper arm relatively still, palms facing inwards in this kind of neutral grip, and we're flexing the elbow and bring the hands towards the chest. Mark's kind of hands are kind of coming almost towards the opposite shoulder. You can do that, or as a variation you can kind of finish with both hands kind of on the sternum, on the top of the sternum anyway. Both are perfectly acceptable variations and techniques for the exercise. So you're almost just focused on giving someone a big hug, but again, the trick is keep the elbows up, so it's just elbow flexor involvement, no lats at all. So that's the pulling movements. You now want to move on to the second presentation of upper body exercises for this module, which is going to go through more the pressing movements and supplementary exercises to the press movement pattern.